photos where I see them coming up here. I'm excited to get fleet renewal today. Fleet renewal, it's all about health of the fleet and meeting the needs of the science, making sure they match up. And these meetings we've had through the annual meetings are really driving home how important this community is to that health of the fleet. If you're from the outside, you're a scientist using the boat, you don't really know the size of the community that's, for here, we're, the front of the stage, but for the science community, this is all going on behind the curtains. And so they don't know how many people are involved and how dedicated everybody is to the task. And so, we saw that with the facility updates, all the facilities, all those capabilities, the IT, the SATCOMs, and today fleet renewal. I mean, it's great to have new vessels coming out, but we have to keep the vessels that are going through their midlives healthy and that sort of thing. So it's, who do we thank? So many people, but I really want to emphasize right now, people at NSF and ONR, Bob Houtman rose to 4, Jim Hollick and Brian Midson at NSF, and Rob Sparrick at ONR, because we're going to hear today about the renewal that they are supporting so directly. And, it's more than support. These folks are deeply involved in so much of what the fleet is, its status of the fleet. They're so aware of what's going on and involving themselves consequently. Where would we be without that dedication? So on behalf of the council, I want to thank those folks, deeply, for the great work that they are doing for us. And these talks today are just going to be another example of those successes. So thank you. Doug?
Thanks, Dennis. And thanks for those good words. Absolutely, we completely agree with you. Thanks for the wonderful support from the agencies and make all of these projects happen. We're going to talk about today. So we're ready to get going. First up is Tim Twomey from Woods Hole. He's going to talk to us about the Atlantis midlife. Tim, welcome, and are you ready to go?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
How's everyone doing?
Great, good to see you. We know you're busy.
Yep, we are probably about 80% complete this afternoon with the Alvin inclination tests. And tomorrow we expect to be on our first harbor dive at St. George's, Bermuda.
Very cool.
So Alice, I do have a PowerPoint that I will share.
Sounds great.
Let me just pull it up here. Is that viewable?
It's great.
All right. All right. So we, as I mentioned, the Atlantis is in Bermuda on the Alvin Trials. They did get down here last week and got out of Woods Hole in the nick of time before a major storm came up the coast, and we were able to duck out, and we were down here in about 2.5 days. And the Cape got really hit hard, for those that don't know, and they were out of power for 3 days or so up there. But so far, all's going well down here. We've had a few little glitches, which is expected, but everything's being worked through. We have Rob Sparrick on the vessel and NAVC representatives. So the Atlantis, excuse me. Let me see if I can. Okay. So the Atlantis sailed from the shipyard on July 16th. We were able to maintain pretty much to original schedule. We had aimed for July 1st, and we had a few remaining things at the end that we wanted to catch up. And the 4th of July weekend kind of offset us a bit there. But overall, we were close to the original schedule and original budget. We completed sea trials, all went well there. We were lucky to have Mike Prince and Rob Sparrick join us during trials. So it was, it all went really well, and we were very happy with Dakota Creek. DP system grooming was completed upon sailing before we went into a science verification cruise that was 8 days post departure. During that time, they did commission the new EM 124, the EK80, and other science systems. The people during the science verification were dropped in San Francisco, and the ship proceeded on to Woods Hole via Panama Canal without any hiccups. Continuous running, they made great speed, and we got back into Hui on the 11th of August. The Alvin was loaded on board 8 September, and there was quite a bit of NAVC certification, both on the Alvin and the launch and recovery system sides. Everything was cleared before departure last week with NAVC, and now we're into further trial verification. System upgrades that were completed during the midlife, I think a lot may be aware, but the new switchboards all went well with Siemens. The new bow thruster, that's retractable and azimuthing. All our input and output points were verified and all working well. As mentioned, the new EM 124 array is online and working for science. EK80 also is fully online. All of our new computer backbone is working, and we have a new full camera system throughout the vessel. Thanks to Scripps with the SatNeg team, we've got our new CKU full sky antenna on top of the mast, and a dual KA Fleet Express system. That's just a little different than the Revell in that we have 2 antennas. So if one loses the signal from the sky, the other one comes on automatically. So far, the internet connectivity on board has been greatly improved since before midlife. Habitability throughout the ship has been welcomed by all hands in our Alvin team on board. New overheads, lighting. We recarpeted all the staterooms, all new mattresses, nice equipment upgrades in the galleys. So everyone is enjoying the upgrades. If you can remember, here's the ship about early or late 2020 with the hull wide open in the engine room and the bow thruster. And then this was kind of a May, June timeframe. You can see the extensive of cabling that was out to load banks on the docks, and all types of all the systems were checked. It was quite an undertaking. Siemens was great, and Dakota Creek throughout the whole thing. Again, here's the engine room. You can see the extent of cabling that checking all the system points. The new OptiMarin ballast water treatment system is fully online and working well. 2 new cranes are on board, and we did have a few issues with those, but everything's been pretty much resolved now. They're both in full operation, and the crew is well accustomed now. Again, here's showing the aft working deck with the extent of cables for testing the main propulsion generators on load banks. Here's the ship alongside at DCI. This was around the sea trial stages and before departure. Here's the new main lab, and today it's all fitted out with new workbenches that were completed at UW. I think everyone that gets on board going forward will appreciate the new lab spaces. This was the bridge kind of a couple months before departure. There was a lot of upgrades in the bridge, navigation equipment, controls, and new Siemens full display. You can see every system in the engineering side from the bridge now, similar to the Sally Ride and the Neil Armstrong. And here's the bridge as of today. Everyone's really enjoying the upgrades and the new finishes on the consoles. Here's the new engine room layout, just kind of looking down from above. So before we had 6 engines on the Atlantis, now we have 4, and same with the Revell and the Thompson. Everything's been going well so far. And here's the ship. We did dry dock the ship about 3 weeks prior to departure. Gave the hull a final cleaning, and we shifted to block position 2 so we could coat the areas that were covered by the blocks during the initial hull coatings. So far, performance has been great. Here's the ship alongside prior to departing. A couple of shots of the ship right after departure and sea trials. And then arrival at Hui. We had a pretty good turnout. It was quite a foggy day, and everyone was glad to see the Atlantis back alongside. Here's a few views of in the labs now. You can see the benches laid out. The ventilation has really been a big improvement. We can dial down the ventilations, and the labs can be really quiet. The new computer lab is really a big change as well, where the server room is in a separate space, so the air conditioning doesn't affect the whole space, having people to wear winter coats. So that's a nice upgrade there. This was a picture just of this week alongside at St. George. The crew has been isolated to the ship. It's pretty quiet on the island these days, but we're in a great position for completing the Alvin trials. Here's a picture just from yesterday. You can see the Alvin in the water there. We have a few swimmers on the sub. They've gone through extensive checks of all the systems on the sub, and after today's incline is completed, they should be ready to take a ride around the harbor. So pretty exciting things there. And if I have a chance here, I do have one video of a launch that I just wanted to show people that haven't seen a sub launch. Let me see if I can just there we go. I'm come through. Are you able to see that on the screen, Alex?
Yes.
All right, here's the Alvin first dip into the water. It was a short one. I had a longer. We have quite a few videos, so if anyone is interested in seeing some of those, we can post them on a site where people can pull them up.
That sounds great.
Overall, things are going well. Everyone's pretty happy with all the new systems and the propulsion. We still have a few odds and ends to catch up with, little teething pains, but nothing significant. So we're pushing ahead, and the next thing after harbor trials will be heading out of Bermuda, and they'll go on various dives at progressing depths, and then Adam Sewell will be going on a mission coming up, and I think he's here to kind of talk about what he has in plan.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome. And if anyone has any questions or wants to see any more specific parts inside the ship, we have everything willing to share.
Can I ask a question now? I was just curious, if I may.
Yes.
Okay, you said you had some trouble with the cranes. What were the issues with that?
Well, we had some various issues just in commissioning. Quality of the coatings weren't ideal. So we did have to go back and fix a few things. Hydraulic systems, a little bit of adjusting, and then we've just updated the firmware on the cranes, which provides our controls. So we provided firmware that can give us a single block, double block, or 4-block shiv arrangement, and that's all working well now. I think most of the issues are all clear now.
Well, Tim, thanks for that update and congratulations to the
Thanks.
Hui team. You guys did a great job planning for, preparing for, executing the midlife. You guys definitely did it right, delivering it on schedule, on time, on budget, and delivering a beautiful ship afterwards. So hats off to all of you for a job very well done.
Thanks, Doug.
Without any other questions, we'll move over to Adam Sewell. Sewell is going to talk about the Alvin upgrade, which is great follow-up to Tim's talk.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Yeah, I'm going to cover a little bit of the upgrade and more of what we have planned for science verification afterwards. Try not to repeat anything that Tim said. Just for people's awareness, I've been part of this Alvin project for many years while I was at Woods Hole, and have subsequently moved to University of Rhode Island Graduate School of Oceanography. So there's, just so there's no confusion about where I reside. Alice, can you go to the next slide? So the overhaul and upgrade of the sub was conducted as it is every 5 years, but in this instance, there was some new systems added that complete the upgrade, allowing the sub to dive to 6,500 meter depth rating. That was the intention of the upgrade from the beginning, especially with the replacement of the personnel sphere, but there were a few remaining parts that needed to be changed out in order to be fully capable of that depth rating, including variable ballast system, syntactic foam, seawater pump, and the frame. In addition, as is typical during an overhaul, systems were upgraded for the usability of the sub, including thrusters and motor controllers, cameras, data systems, and power management. And as we approached the finish line of this overhaul and upgrade, there was a lot of new systems that had to be kind of validated in collaboration with NAVSEA. Overall, that process went a little slower than anticipated, and that led to a delay in departure of Atlantis and Alvin from Hui of about 6 weeks, which has some follow-on impacts on the schedule for the science verification cruise and subsequent science cruises, which I'll show you how that played out. Next slide, Alice. All right, so one more beautiful shot of Alvin with second mate Max Cantor sitting on the sail there. The onshore testing was all completed at Hui. As Tim said, they're in progress for the dockside testing in Bermuda, the inclination tests. And they'll head out from Bermuda towards Puerto Rico to do progressive depth divings, ultimately achieving certification to dive to 6,500 meters. And that process is occurring over the time period from October 26th to November 17th. Next slide, Alice. So once the sub has been certified for use, the science verification expedition is going to take place, where we're going to run the sub through its paces, make sure that it's ready for the science community, and test some of the systems that are new to the sub, including how one conducts dives at 6,500 meters, which may include, extending the dive day and how long you can keep up that pace of operations. The science verification will be conducted by the team you see in front of you here. It's a really great group. And one thing that I would mention is that the dates for this cruise have been in flux and only recently solidified. And despite that, the community is so excited to participate that we only lost 2 people, and those were more senior people. So everyone is really enthusiastic and thankful to the National Science Foundation for supporting an effort to make sure that the sub is as good as it can be for science operations. Next slide, Alice. We set out when we put together this group, not only to have the personnel on board who know the sub really well and can, do excellent testing of its science capabilities, but also to expose new users to the vehicle and to try and make a diverse and inclusive science party. So by the numbers, we have 20 scientists participating, 12 male and 8 female. 10 of those are new users. So they have not had an opportunity to dive in the sub, or maybe have done so once or twice. 8 of the participants are early career, 5 are senior, 3 are mid-career. 3 of the participants are engineers by training. 2 of them are science communicators by training. We have 2 postdocs, 1 graduate student, and importantly, 1 native Puerto Rican and 1 Puerto Rico resident. The verification dives are all going to be happening in Puerto Rico, and it was important to us to ensure that the Puerto Rican science community was represented in the group. You can see where they hail from. Not unsurprisingly, they're mostly coastal, but we do have some from the interior of the country. All right, next slide, Alice. So the schedule for this cruise is to mobilize in San Juan, Puerto Rico on November 20th, depart on the 21st. We'll have 10 dive days in the Puerto Rico Trench area. Fortunately, we will be able to offload personnel back in San Juan on the 1st of December, at which point the ship is going to transit up to Morehead City, North Carolina, where we'll have a data demob and get ready for the next science cruise. I left on this map the site for the Mid-Cayman Spreading Center. The initial plan for this cruise was to conduct dives in the Puerto Rico Trench and at the Mid-Cayman Spreading Center to get kind of 2 different environments that offer abyssal depths that the sub might be working at. But in the end, because of the delays, we had to shorten the cruise a bit and remove that transit. So we'll be doing all our dives at the Puerto Rico Trench. Next slide, Alice. So what we're going to be testing while we're out there, we're going to be trying to validate as well as document for the science community the new imaging systems on the sub, navigation at abyssal depths, new event logging software that's part of the sub, data transfer, all the different tools for sample collection and storage that are rated for those depths, and dive ops with extended dive days. In addition, during the night times, we will be testing some kind of technology that augments operation of Alvin. In this case, it's a deep autonomous profiler. You can see an image of it or a diagram of it on the lower right. This is essentially a CTD/lander that is autonomous or unconnected from the ship. Atlantis and perhaps the UNOLS rules will prevent CTD deployments greater than 6,000 meters. And in this area, we have depths greater than 8,000 meters. So this is going to allow us to extend the range of our observations beyond what's capable by Alvin or the ship and collect samples in the process of seawater, but also using sensors. We'll have a baited camera. We'll be collecting eDNA and passive acoustics as well. Next slide, Alice. This is a rough plan for the dive sites in the Puerto Rico Trench area. They're really kind of divided up into 3 areas. The North Trench, or the seaward side of the trench, has fault exposures that reveal lower crust and upper mantle, including the alteration that takes place there, has hard substrates on these exposed walls for sesquipfauna. In the trench axis, it's generally speaking too deep to dive with Alvin, but there are a few places we can dive, and in addition, we can use the lander to get out down to the deepest parts of the trench. And on the southern end of the trench, you see the kind of sharp edge of the carbonate platform on which Puerto Rico sits. That's the site of large landslides, potentially tsunamigenic landslides that people have looked at for a number of years, potential methane or freshwater seeps that have been kind of proposed or hypothesized for the area. So most of these sites have no observations by human or robotic vehicles. And so we'll be doing kind of the first dives in this area. Next slide, Alice. So for the science party, we've divided up into different science teams based on discipline. So we have teams for geology and chemistry, microbiology and macrobiology and engagement. And we also have divided up for verification teams. So there will be groups who are focused on imaging or navigation or data or concepts. Apologize for the dog in the background. Next slide, Alice.
Oh, there it goes.
And in addition to the activities that we're going to be doing on the ship, we're going to enable some remote participation. We have procured a high bandwidth connection through Marlink and HiSeasNet. And we're going to allow the research community to engage in what we're doing through kind of Zoom calls during post-dive meetings. 1 second. Hey, April. Sorry about that. And so we're going to have people participate in the post-dive meetings. Then we will have daily live briefings via Facebook or YouTube. And we're going to have, please take care out of here. We're going to have remote engagement with classrooms, science centers, and media. Some of them that have been set up so far is connecting with SUNY Geneseo, which one of our participants is faculty member there, and they're communicating science class, and Hawaii Pacific University on their marine biology class. In addition, because of the date changes, many of the participants are going to need to deliver lectures to their classes. And so the bandwidth is going to be used for that as well. And next slide, Alice, is the last one. There's already been quite a lot of media associated with the Alvin upgrade. I just wanted to review some of it. There was a story in Wired, and I assume, Alice, these slides will go up somewhere so people can click these links. There was a PBS documentary by a group called Changing Seas that was really good and is expected to get some national distribution. There's a group called Seeker that does online science-based reporting, and they made a very nice short film as well. There was, of course, an article in the Cape Cod Times, but we expect that that might get picked up nationally. And there's a blog through the National Deep Submergence Facility that is being updated right now during the sea trials, and that we're going to contribute to daily during the science verification expedition. So lots of ways to tune in, and we'll make sure through UNOLS to distribute the links for remote participation if people are interested. And that's all I have. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Adam?
Oh, I see Claire Reimers has a question for you, Adam.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Adam. I was just wondering, you seem to have quite a science program as well as a verification goals. And how are you going to try to balance that over the limited time you have in the cruise?
Yeah, so, everyone participating understands that the verification goals are the priority of the cruise. But part of the verification is to conduct science with the sub. And so everyone is also aware that there will be opportunistic science that takes place. And the way that we're trying to arrange it is to kind of tilt the playing field towards the more junior participants and have them get opportunities to collect samples. And that seems like the right thing to do. Also, they're just much more productive than the old people and will write papers as well. So people understand that they may get 1, 2, 3 samples. That's part of their motivation for participating is to try and do science, but also it's to learn the sub and be able to write effective proposals for it in the future.
Thanks.
Thanks, Adam. That was a great update and exciting what's coming up now. So hopefully things will continue to progress well after a long, hard road to get to this point.
Yeah.
And a lot of flexibility on a lot of people's part, but that's the nature of what we do. So, but thank you very much for giving us that update today.
You bet.
Next up, we're going to talk about the regional class research vessels, and Claire's going to provide that for us.
Okay, thanks. Happy to be reporting on the RCRV project for the OSU team. And go to the next slide, please. So just to remind you, the RCRV project, Regional Class Research Vessel Project, is a 3-vessel build. It's being funded by the National Science Foundation under their Major Research Equipment and Facilities Construction or Major Facilities Funding program. And we're currently in the construction phase for 3 vessels. The Tani will be the first vessel completed and will be operated by Oregon State University on the West Coast. The Narragansett Dawn is the second vessel in line, and it'll be operated on the East Coast by the East Coast Consortium led by URI. And the third vessel is the Gilbert R. Mason, to be operated in the Gulf Coast jointly by the University of Southern Mississippi and LUMCON as part of the Gulf Caribbean Oceanographic Consortium. Next slide, please. So this is a MREFC project. We're in what's considered phase 3, which is construction phase. It started in 2017. This is a list of the milestones for that project as outlined by NSF and the ones that are completed. The total project cost that's approved is, you can see, $363.4 million. Using our management, earned value management kind of tracking of the project, we're approximately 41% complete right now, and have a contingency balance of a little over $22 million. Next slide, please. This is the current schedule for the project, and I'll talk about how the schedule has changed over the course of the project shortly. This is a draft schedule, and it's based on working with the shipyard currently on some delays, incorporating delays that have arisen because of COVID. But this is the schedule that they're working to at the moment. And you can see the first vessel, Tani, being delivered in 2023, followed by a year transition for science trials, with operations starting in 2024. The other vessels follow with a 6-month stagger for each vessel. Next slide. So just to talk about the project duration and some of the things that have been influencing the schedule. I'm sure you're all aware that we are a bit beyond the original plan. The current project end date is 20 months behind what we had it originally. Early construction delays were tied primarily to the shipyard that we contracted with, Gulf Island Shipyards, their management, and some deficiencies in that management, and also in their ability to produce integrated production modeling and production drawings through a subcontractor. So in 2020, through negotiating with that shipyard, we transitioned the design modeling to Gloston. And with that major change, we really have overcome what was a significant bottleneck with the shipyard. COVID then added some delays to the modeling work, just because people couldn't work, in their offices and things like that. But that work is essentially complete now here in 2021. Next slide. We have had some other challenges though in 2021 that have affected the schedule. In May, Gulf Island Shipyard sold their HOMA facilities to Bollinger. And this actually is a really good thing for the project, we believe at this point. Bollinger is the largest privately owned yard in the country. They have a long history of successful projects with the Coast Guard and the Navy. And though there were some delays as there was this transition, and they kind of had to assess where things were and how to get, how they were going to implement their practices moving forward. We're beyond that now, and work is really ramping up quite nicely. And we really saw some great progress in August of 2021. Next slide. But then we had another little problem that came through on August 29th, and it was Hurricane Ida. And it went, this was a Category 4 hurricane, went directly over Houma, Louisiana, and the site of the shipyard. So what you're seeing in this image is a couple days after Ida passed. It's an aerial view of the shipyard. You can see everything is flooded. I've labeled some of the main structures. That Vessel 1 and Vessel 2 main modules that are under construction are in that building, that main fabrication building. So they actually were hardly damaged at all. That was a really good thing. The one area that was highly damaged is circled in the bottom of the slide. They were these big top warehouses that had been constructed, sort of looking like big tents. They were completely destroyed, those structures. And so anything stored in those warehouses were exposed to the weather. And so that was a problem. And we're still trying to assess that damage by having, for instance, individual contractors like RAP and Siemens come in and go through all that equipment and make sure there's nothing that needs to be replaced, or if it does, identify it. So, the shipyard can make claims to insurance and all those great things. Let's see, next slide, I guess. Some other things to say about Ida is, even though the shipyard fared pretty well, the surrounding area did not. And this is creating some problems. Of course, all the workforce has been affected and many left homeless. And for a long time, they couldn't get to the shipyard. Power was out for about 6 weeks. So again, a lot of local infrastructure issues affecting the area. Next slide. And this slide is just to emphasize, the scale of Ida compared to some other hurricanes in terms of local utilities. Due to the high winds of Ida, there was just major losses to the electrical grid in the region. But they're working to bring it back, and currently the shipyard does have power, and but that's only been for a couple weeks. Next slide. So this slide is actually a more recent slide showing reconstruction of some of those warehousing facilities. Bollinger has really stepped up to the task of bouncing back from Ida. They're working to improve the storage. They're working to improve drainage on the site, which of course they inherited from Gulf Island Shipyard. They're working with the local community, supporting their labor force. So a lot of positive things, and the project meets regularly with Bollinger management to discuss what they're doing and kind of how, or basically to keep us informed of what they're doing. Next slide. So this slide is probably the best summary for the construction part of the project. So what you see here are the 3 vessels. The vessels are being built as modules. So they're in sections that get put together. And so you can see the color coding here that indicates for the 3 vessels the progress. So Tani, of course, is the furthest along. And you can see that the hull sections are basically complete and being outfitted. The superstructure is under construction, and I'll show some pictures of that. And so, again, you can see it pretty much all sections of the Tani are seeing work at this time. And then you can also see that Narragansett Dawn is sort of staggered behind that. And then the real construction work on the 3rd vessel, the Mason, is really just getting underway. Next slide. So here's some photographs. So the top left is what we call a super module. So it's 3 of those sections that have been welded together. This is for Tani. This was when that super module was moved out from the fabrication facility for blast and paint back in March. And then the 2 photographs on the right are after the blast and paint, showing some interior views of the painted interior. And then the bottom photos just, again, are meant to emphasize that a lot of the ship's systems are being delivered and going through factory acceptance tests. You see John Komar, our lead at the shipyard, in the picture on the left, looking at the buyer systems for the bridge. You see the Siemens system, the Blue Drive plus C control system there being uncrated, and then one of the generators. So again, things are coming together. Next slide. One advantage to Bollinger is they took over the aluminum work at one of their other yards in Amelia, Louisiana, and these are some photographs of work there. So the bow section, forecastle, and the bulwarks, all pretty much completed for Tani. Some of the interior of those sections. Next slide. Back at the Homa facility, this is again in the fabrication shop. You see at the right-hand side, again, that super module for Tani, and what's in the front of the photo is actually the acoustic flat being brought in to be welded into the hull. And so that occurred in October. Next slide. So at OSU, we're also very active in preparing for phase 4, or the transition to operations. We have a facility we call our desk for regional class research vessel data engineering. And oh gosh, I've forgotten my own acronym. And science systems, I think it is, or center, science center. Anyway, our group there is working on the development and integration of the sensors, and with the shipboard networking and cyber infrastructure. They're working on systems for all 3 vessels. So for instance, you can see in the lower right-hand slide a picture of 3 of the weather sensors, one for each vessel, that are in our facilities for testing. The picture on the left, bottom left, is actually a mock-up of the whole flow-through seawater system with all its sensors tied again to the networking for testing. And so the team there are working on all this infrastructure, also receiving vessel spares that are in storage. The photo in the upper right shows our storage facilities. And they're working in collaboration with UNOLS and all the ARF working groups, such as R2R and the list you see there in the slide. Next slide, we're almost done here. Just want to say that really trying to make advances in the cyber infrastructure realm. This is being led by engineer Chris Ramsos. This is a diagram he put together of the systems. There'll be, of course, one for each vessel that ties everything together, and will be basically ready to go to be installed on the ships when, at delivery. Last slide, I think. So I just want to say that we also have an outreach program as part of this funding from NSF, and are working to share what we're doing. And one of the outreach products is a set of videos that talk about this construction project, and the second one was just released, and that link is there in this last slide. It's about an 8-minute video, takes you through the shipyard, and well, I encourage you to share it with your colleagues. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. Appreciate that update. Any questions for Claire regarding all that's going on in RCRV? Their on-site team does a tremendous job. Oh, Tim Twomey's got a question. You're muted, Tim. There you go.
Hi, Claire. Thanks for the presentation. Now, what's the approximate cost of one of the vessels? Just out of curiosity.
Well, it's always difficult to answer that because it depends on what you mean. I mean, do you mean what we're paying the shipyard, or do you mean the total project costs associated with the construction? But you can see the total project cost is 364 million. Divide that by 3.
Yeah.
But again, that includes, support of the transition to operations and all, our operating institutions as we bring these vessels on board. So it's not the construction cost.
Thanks. Understood. Thanks.
Claire, great job by the OSU team and all the operational the OIs, because I know it's been a lot of challenges this year with hurricanes and changes in ownership of the shipyard, but you guys keep marching along, providing great updates, resolving problems, and we know eventually we'll get some great ships. So thanks for all the hard work by everybody.
Thank you for being part of our science oversight committee and change control board, and we value your inputs as well.
Oh, thanks, Claire. Appreciate it. Okay, moving right ahead per our agenda, Sean Higgins is going to give us an update on the LANGSETH.
Can you hear me there, Doug?
Loud and clear.
Great. Yeah, now for something completely different. And stuff. So it's amazing to see the scale of these projects that people have been undertaking. We lack in some of that financial scale. We try to make up with a lot of complexity, as you see what's on the vessel here. It's a picture from about 8 years ago, going through New York Harbor for the first time. Next slide there, Alice. So this is the LANGSETH as of just a couple of weeks ago before we got out of dry dock out here at Everett Ship Repair. This is a new shipyard that rose from the ashes of Puglia's Fairhaven and Bellingham yard. The dry dock is actually from that yard, and this is a new joint venture between Nichols Boat Yard on Whidbey Island and Everett Ship Repair under a venture capital investment team out of Stamford, I think is the money behind it. As you'll notice, it's a dry dock without any sidewalls. They're making changes to some of this to add to this. But it was interesting. All the painting done, which was really nice paint job they did on the vessel here. It was all done with paint rollers and stuff, and actually turned out quite nice. Probably one of the best paint jobs we've had. But we just finished the dry dock portion of our 5-year surveys here at Everett here in October, about mid-October, and just sailed the vessel down to Newport to the Oregon State facility. We broke kind of an unusual year for us in that we broke our shipyard up into 2 periods. One was in the spring at Lake Union Dry Dock, also in Seattle, where we took on all sort of the above the waterline work and did work on the bulwarks and air handlers and a lot of steel repairs and tank inspections and UT surveying, and then left the underwater work on pulling the shafts and propellers and hubs and everything and checking that, sea valves and all the underwater work we left till the fall shipyard. So it was largely because we couldn't get into any dry docks, thanks Tim, and stuff earlier in the year. And so we ended up splitting up our shipyards, but it's gone well. I would say that ABS and was very pleased with how good a condition the hull was in from that standpoint. And actually got a lot of nice work done at both yards, and I'd say this yard has some potential moving forward for others looking for another potential dry dock location. I think they're struggling with a lot of labor shortages. A lot of places are, but I think there's some hope here that this will be another nice facility to be able to make use of. Next slide. So very briefly, some of the major shipyard maintenance things we took on with the help of Jim Hollick. One of the last big pieces that needed to be upgraded was the seismic source controller that controls our large air gun array and ensures reliable things. So that was a major upgrade to our seismic system. One of the few things that we hadn't been able to do previously. We basically upgraded the DP to from its out of beyond end of life status and stuff into a modern sort of DP1 system there. And so that went well, working with Kongsberg here this spring. We have a new back deck tow mill crane coming from Hullbolt, replacing an effort crane that's up in our back deck and stuff, and that's due to be delivered here in December. Just getting pictures of the completed crane. It's been running a little bit behind schedule. But starting at the end of last year, we kind of set a pretty exhaustive list of all the things that once we bought the vessel from NSF last summer, we had a lot of meetings as to what needed to happen to get us out to our anticipated 24 retirement and things that were due and what we need to achieve over this period of time. So we overhauled the turbos. We basically overhauled both the main Bergen diesel engines. We have another set of Caterpillar engines that runs our large air compressors, and those were overhauled this spring as well. It's a lot of more things there. We replaced the marine sanitation device, one of the main air handlers, and 20 of the 5 of the in-room AC heating units. So again, I mentioned we have 2 shipyard periods and stuff. And again, I think it's interesting to note that over the 12 years I've been there, I still don't think we've actually been back to the same shipyard twice in all the time. So we've managed to circle most of the United States with different shipyards, which makes it interesting at times. Next, please. And just to not totally get lost in the shipyards, we did manage to squeeze in some big projects this summer. There were 2 large seismic projects that took the better part of 2 years to get all the permitting accomplished. There was something on the order of about 15 different permits and authorizations that Holly Smith worked doggedly through, threatening to commit Harry Carey at many points throughout this process. But it was, this is the end result of the Cascadia subduction zone, the first time it's really been mapped in this level of detail. This was a multi-ship project, including the Oceanus and also the Rachel Carson, providing support for the LANGSETH as a scout vessel in sensitive areas. And so this was led by Pablo Canales from Woods Hole and Suzanne Carbot from Lamont, and a large concerted effort of a lot of folks and stuff to get through this program over a long period of time. A lot of different manifestations of here, but so that was really happy. This is again being done with 12 to 15 kilometers of streamer towed behind the vessel, as well as 100 and some odd OBS deployments up and down through this area. Next. The next project was the Queen Charlotte Fault project, led by a trio of Lindsay Worthington from New Mexico, Emily Rowland from Western Washington, and Maureen Walton, who was with the USGS when it started, but I'm not sure I don't think she's there anymore. But this is another large seismic project, essentially continuing on almost from where we left off with the previous project. The diamonds and other shapes in here are OBS deployments, and the rest is again a 15-kilometer, almost 10-mile long streamer behind the vessel. It's like 1,260 channels. The weather during the first project was terrible, and this one was like a pond out there. So there was essentially no weather out there, which was pretty astonishing up until the last few days of the project. But really excited about the data that we were able to collect. Working with these really super long offset streamers is still work in progress sometimes in these conditions, looking at the currents and things, but it's yielding some really fascinating data for the scientists here. Next. And So I'm not going into a lot of details. They're showing a lot of the pictures from the shipyards and stuff. I'm still working up the report. I just left there a couple weeks ago, and actually in Kansas City right now at a wedding reception. So I only had time to throw together a few slides here today. But as far as the Langsats replacement, this is an active effort that we're making as part of the purchase of the Langseth. The proposal was really geared towards what we were going to try to replace it with at Columbia. We're still aiming for the Langseth to be retired in fall 24 at this point, essentially 3 years beyond this dry dock. So barring any substantial difficulties, these well could have been our last shipyard with the vessel. We're still targeting 2025 for a replacement vessel, and there's a lot of work going on and stuff, and a lot of things I'll be putting my attention to now after this year's overhauls, and in terms of hiring also a new marine ops manager to assist at OMO. But we're working right now with the LDO director at the climate school, which is a major new initiative of the university. I think, as I've mentioned previously, first new school at Columbia in like 40 years. And so this is a major fundraising strategic part of that. And the ship's very much integrated into that. And so we're working very closely with these entities right now on the funding for a planning and operations team to basically start working on vessel planning as full-time jobs. And so we're starting to put together both the final budget and plan for that. And so that's going to be the next really big thing moving forward here in the coming year and stuff, to try to accelerate some of the time lost over the last year with the COVID and things there at the university. So I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean. Any questions for him on that great update?
Yeah, and I was happy to have Doug come out to Everett while we were there as well. So he hadn't seen the ship out there. So it was fun to have Doug on board while we were in dry dock there.
It's an impressive ship and an impressive operation. I learned a lot. So thanks for having me, Sean. Kip.
Hi there. Sean, are there going to be like science mission requirements for the Langseth replacement? Is that something that's going to get shared?
Well, we're certainly going to try to make use of the new global science mission requirements that recently the Fleet Improvement Committee was working on. So we're going to try to make use of those, as well as things that we've been meeting with the scientists at Lamont to add into that. But we're hoping to certainly make use of some of the effort that's gone in over the last couple of years in the UNOLS things. But we definitely plan on liaisoning with the UNOLS system, if you will, across all the committees.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
Okay, any other questions for Sean? Well, thanks for that update, Sean. Great to see you.
No, thanks, Doug.
Okay, last on our list for today is Greg Raymond from NOAA is going to provide us an update on NOAA's 2 construction programs they have happening at this time. Thanks for joining us, Greg.
Yes, thank you for having me. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gregory Raymond. I'm the Director of Platform and Infrastructure Acquisition for NOAA's Office of Marine Aviation Operations. So one of the things that's new to this is we actually have combined both infrastructure and all the platforms, ships, aircraft, and small boats into one division under my leadership and the team that will present today, to ensure that everything is integrated across all of those platforms as we deliver these products for NOAA and the nation. Go ahead and next slide, please. So today we're just going to give you a brief overview of the program, our overall status, touch on the Oceanographer and Discoverer, and then the Class B program and any questions you may have. Next slide. So currently we are in the process of designing and building 4 classes of vessels. The Class A, which has now become the Oceanographer and Discoverer, that are under detailed design and construction at TMC. And then the Class B, which is our main charting and surveying vessels that will hopefully be, everything goes right and Congress does what they're supposed to do, will go out for release and the RFP will hit the street soon. Then Class C vessels, much smaller vessels, similar to I guess the RCRVs, trawl capable shallow draft, but in that size range, and then Class D later. And as much as I would love to speak to you guys for a really long time, my PMs can go into much greater detail on these platforms than I can. So I'd like to first introduce Gerardo Nixon, who is our Oceanographer Discoverer Program Manager. Gerardo.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Can I get the next slide, please? Awesome. Thank you. So as Greg was saying, I am the NAV program manager. I've been, with the program back since 2014. My background is naval architecture. So when it comes to the evolution of the program, I have a fairly good handle on where we are with the design. Reason I say this is, we went through a fairly in-depth phase 1 preliminary design process with 3 different shipyards. We ended up going down the full battery of testing to include model testing for the vessel design that we selected. And so we found that the Thomas C design, who was awarded the phase 2 detailed design contract option, was the best way for us to go. It's just everything consolidated and everything in that design came to be to where it was what we ended up with. So as far as the past year, we've gone through design reviews 1 through 4. This started back in January of 2021. We're at the point right now where we are finalizing the detailed design. We're getting ready, and again with IDA impacts, and I'll go a little bit into that in next bullet, but we are getting ready to go into design review 5. There were some events that ended up altering the schedule a little leading up to that, mainly modification 10, which was addition of 2 state-of-the-art VSAT radomes up on the bridge top, as well as a significant network upgrade and expansion, and some network security implementation. So as you know, ships are facing more and more cybersecurity threats, and so we're figuring out how to, when it comes into the NOAA IT framework, or the NOAA IT security envelope, how to make that asset work in the modern world. Going to Hurricane Ida impacts, I think the RCRV covered it extensively as far as what the impact to the surrounding areas. I think in a lot of cases, and this is true for NAV as well, the shipyard facilities had fairly minor impacts or a fairly reduced damage. However, the bulk of the hurricane impacts was felt by the shipyard staff. And so what we're finding on the NAV is that even though the yard had to shut down for about 6 to 8 weeks when Hurricane Ida hit, they have since reconstituted engineering efforts, and we are right now going according to plan. I mean, we did have a bit of a schedule impact. However, we're looking to see what we can do in construction to make the program as most efficient as we can to again handle those workforce shortages that I think the region is feeling right now. In addition, we're right now starting communications with our line offices to go to that next level or next step, which is going to be figuring out what deltas we need to cover for the ships to be put into operations come 2024, 2025, 2026, once the assets finally get turned over into the field. Next slide, please. So these are some pictures. We had an on-site visit last week. Even though it's been 2 months after Hurricane Ida initially hit, the area surrounding the shipyard, and that's the bottom left picture that you can see there, the community and the infrastructure down there is still, or has still been severely impacted. Now, we did have aerial photographs of these warehouses. I didn't put them in because the message I wanted to capture here is, even though impacts to the shipyard facilities, kind of like the warehouses, were minor. I mean, in this case, you had some roof damage. We got extremely lucky. You can see our pilot house mock-up there on the right. Had that, the roof tiles blown off about 2 meters to the left, we would be in a completely different picture. And all of a sudden, I don't know where we would have been with the pilot house mock-up. So there was a certain amount of, I don't want to call it luck, but there was a certain amount of luck involved in just how things evolved with the shipyard. So right now we're basically in a period where we're reconstituting or trying to figure out how we can make things most efficient to help them with their recovery efforts and to make sure that we can minimize impacts to both the warehouse, or sorry, their workforce, as well as their how to make most use of the facilities and the production processes that we're going to be following to make this a successful program. That's what I had for the NOAA AGRO variant. Next slide. So as I said, we're still assessing the impacts from Hurricane Ida. This represents the pre-Ida, or basically our baseline schedule. This will be modified as we figure out, okay, these are the impacts from Hurricane Ida. This is what it means to our schedule. This is what construction is actually going to look like. We're projecting right now, I think anywhere from 2 to 4 months. Could be, slightly lower, could be slightly more, but we're still in the middle of negotiation. So I don't want to discuss that too in depth, since it's still a changing target. Next slide. And yeah, now I'll turn it over to Sin, who is a Class B program manager.
Thanks, Gerardo. Good afternoon, everyone. See some familiar names on the participant list. So I am the newish program manager for Class B. I spent 20 years in the Navy prior to this. So getting my feet wet over here at NOAA. And we're here to talk about Class B, being, of course, the ship class that's following their Class A NOAA AGOR variant. So these ships are a little bit bigger than the Class A ships. You can see the primary missions. We're doing a lot of charting and surveys. One of the things that we're definitely honing on mission-wise on the ship is to become a little more multi-mission capable, which includes launching, we call them HSLs in another world, but in here we're calling them crewed and uncrewed vessels. We're going to be procuring the crewed launches, kind of like our HSLs, like I said, equivalent on this program based on the base contract, and then we're working with our line offices to determine our requirements for our 2 uncrewed, which will be procured separately with a different IDIQ contract. So we're really going through the early stages of getting our contract together. We are targeting for an RFP release somewhere in the January timeframe. I know maybe some of you have seen the draft RFP that was put out on the street earlier this year around the April and May timeframe. So since then, we've been working with the Navy to work with the ICE. Again, really no big surprises there, and we're still marching towards our 2+2. So the 2 ships awarded with the base contract, and then with an option of 2 more. The other things that we've been working on since the release of the draft RFP is just go through all of our basic specifications on the ship, not only on the ship side, but again, previously mentioned some of our crewed and uncrewed launches. Still got some great challenges ahead of us. Certainly some of the new things I'm learning working over here at NOAA in terms of how they get their funding and the timing and all that coming in here. And one of the interesting things that we are doing with this Class B is it's a government hull design. So we're using one of our previous hulls and one of our previous programs about 10 years ago, the FSV. We're going to be using that as sort of like our baseline hull form for our shipyard. So when we put out the RFP, they will be required to use at least the hull lines for this program. Next slide, please. Moving forward, a little bit different with Class B with Class A. Class A was a joint partnership with the U.S. Navy and NOAA. But unlike Class A, we will be taking the lead on this and doing NOAA-led design. So we're doing all the contracting and all the program management, although we will still have some help in support from the Navy, which, they've been very helpful even up through this process, getting all of our documentation together and as we drive towards an RFP release. Also getting our act together for our milestone reviews. We're going to be doing a milestone 2/3 versus a separate 2/3 with the Department of Commerce. So we've got mostly those documents together. It's a little bit out towards the right of the schedule, but we are definitely at least got to get the RFP out before we get to that point. So as I mentioned, shooting for that mid-January, which aligns with our folks at EAD, the Eastern Acquisition Division, our version of contracts. And I'd say we're probably about 90 to 95%. We're just driving the last bit of that information. A lot of it is letting the new guy come in here and try to figure some of this, how NOAA does business. And maybe I'm slowing the process a little bit, but it's been a good learning experience for sure. Mentioned about getting the draft RFP out in the April-May timeframe. Well, we're going to be doing another industry day down at the Workboat Show this year in early December. So if anybody's going, make sure to stop by either either see me at the booth or see us at our industry day. And the last bit is, again, one of the main missions of the ship, being multi-mission, is crewed and uncrewed launch specifications. We're pretty good, I think, right now, driving towards the crew specs. The uncrewed, we're going to be doing that again as a separate contract procurement outside of the base contract, and certainly we've been working with some of our partners outside of our line offices to get some lessons learned on how to drive down those specifications. And we'll at least be 2 on each ship, and we'll see based on the base contract, and if we award the 2 options, how many total we're going to end up buying. All right, next slide, please. And just an overview of the schedule as that red line keeps moving to the right, as we get closer to, eclipsing those little orange boxes. We're going to get close to issuing that RFP. Now, this solicitation is a little bit different from NOAA AGOR. There is no preliminary phase 1 design. We're going straight to a winner-take-all detailed design and construction. And how we've mitigated that is a little bit longer period for proposal receipts, and kind of given the notional 18-month to do detailed design. I kind of look at that more of like a 6-month functional design, a little bit of a transition as we go towards 12th month of detailed design. And we're projecting at least a 24-month construction cycle. So 42 months total for lead ship, for contract award all the way down to ship delivery. All right, I think that's all we have on Class B. Any questions from anyone?
Well, thanks very much, Greg, Gerardo, and Sin. Those are great presentations and really helpful for us to know what you guys are doing. Very exciting times in NOAA with NAVC getting these ship construction projects moving ahead. So any questions for any of these 3 gentlemen? Well, I guess you dazzled us with brilliance. So we really appreciate you taking the time late in your day back there to update us on this and share the information. We work closely with NOAA day in and day out in our community. So we look forward to the results of your work down the road when we see the ships out there working and helping us out. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda for today. We appreciate all the speakers. Very exciting times going on, a lot happening. Continuing to happen with the fleet upgrades and renewals. Dennis, any last comments for today?
Oh, just that we'll see everybody on Wednesday at 4 o'clock East Coast time, at least.
And it should be a super interesting meeting too. We've got Larry Mayer, the first of our 2 featured speakers on Wednesday.
And his topic is Decade of the Ocean, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Great. So it'll be great to learn about that.
I think it should be an interesting talk.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.